Welcome back in time for our extra special piece. Now on Breakfast Extra. Now they say language is power, and last week Nigerian expressions like Abeg and Amala found a new kind of validation officially added to the Oxford English Dictionary. Now, this recognition goes beyond slang. It reflects migration, culture, influence, and the way Nigerians continue to shape global English through everyday speech. So to have this conversation with us, we have Kingsley Ugwuanyi, consultant at the Oxford English Dictionary and senior lecturer at the University of Nsukka, Nigeria. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, Kingsley. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Mavi. Thank you so much. It is always my pleasure to be here with New Central, especially to discuss this topic.
Yes. So we should celebrate now, shouldn't we? Well, but every year Nigerian words get added to the Oxford Dictionary, but this year's one is actually very interesting. Words like Abeg, which I thought should have been there since, but then again, there's one particular word which I'm allowed only to say once that made it into the Oxford Dictionary. And I'm wondering what kind of influence a word has to have before it's accepted. The word nyash, for instance, was one word that made it in. How is this possible, and why does it make it in on this set of words making it in 2026?
Yeah, thank you so much. You started by saying we should celebrate. Yes, I think the celebration should have started a long time ago, because this has been happening for a long while. But I think it was in 2020, early 2020, January 2020, that the OED added a long list, a list of Nigerian English words. That was about 26 of them, 28 of them at the time. And since then, they did another one in 2024 and in 2025. This last one actually was added in the update of December 2025, but it became public knowledge in this January. Yeah, so it's been happening. And to now address your question more directly is what qualifies a word, if I should rephrase your question that way, to be added. And I will say many things, but the most important one is use. Is this word being used by people? Yes, then that is when the word comes to be considered. Now, what the OED does is that it has a system that traces words, new words that are used across the English-speaking world that are not already in the dictionary. And when this word pops up, they try to see where is this word spoken, which country or countries are these words spoken, and how are they used, what do they mean? And then they begin to assemble the meaning. So they want to see that this word is actually a word that is in use. They want to see that the meaning of the word is relatively clear, all right? Perhaps apart from the word of the year for most dictionaries, 6-7 actually last year, which is not a Nigerian English word, by the way, was used across the English-speaking world globally, all right? Which the meaning is difficult to be pinned down, but generally OED wants to be clear that the meaning of the word is clear, that the word is being used, and that the word has been used for a sustained period of time. And there is evidence, because that's the most important thing. The OED does not create its own sentences. No, what it does is that it goes to text, social media, music, anything that can lay hold, that can make reference to say, yes, this word is used by these people in this context. So they need to guarantee that all these criteria are satisfied before that word will be added.
So Kingsley, cultural influence has to be one of them as well. How we've affected, or cross-cultural influence, how we've affected other cultures, and how these other cultures actually have accepted that word. You did say English. I'm wondering whether it's just the English-speaking countries that have to have accepted these words, or if it should span across different cultures apart from English. That's one question, but let's be done with that first.
Now, these words are characterized as Nigerian English words for a reason. And the reason is that they are predominantly used in the senses that the OED has added them by Nigerians. So first of all, what they are looking, if they find out that the word is used predominantly in Nigeria, they are likely going to characterize it as Nigerian English. But is this word used by people in that country. That is the first thing. But we do know, for example, that West travel, there's nowhere that starts its life and finishes its life in a particular country, especially in a globalized world where it is easy for people and ideas and words to travel, right? The word we did mention, which is of course the most interesting one, and I put interesting in quotes, among the least added one is the word nyashi, right? Right, which actually, if you look at the OED definition, one of the examples in the list of examples actually comes from Kenyan newspapers, right? And what that tells you is that this word is even though it is characterized as Nigerian, even though it is predominantly used in Nigeria, has traveled across Africa. And we know what is causing this travel: cultural productions, music, movies, right? And you know that Nigeria is huge, Nollywood is huge, Nigerian music industry is huge. Not just across Africa, but also globally. So cultural influence, cultural capitalism is also important in what popularizes this word. For example, the word we're just talking about is popularized even within Nigeria. It's popularized by movies and music.
Kingsley, I'm very curious about that word. I'm also very curious about another word and how it applies that they have been, longevity is where I'm going. These words have been used over decades. Abeg, for instance, is a very common word, which I've heard for all 4 decades of my entire life. And I'm wondering why only up until now is it being added to the dictionary. The N-word is another one. Pangulu is another word. It's been around. And even these words crossed cultures through music, like Afrobeat and Fela, whom before the internet age had carried these words across countries, across continents, and was well known themselves. So why did it take that long for it to be recognized?
All right, I like that question. And this is something I sometimes that my students get confused when you teach them about, that the dictionary, the language is before the dictionary. The language is bigger than the dictionary. The dictionary is just a book, right? Traditionally speaking, that documents how language is used. It's not the language itself. And you imagine there are several dictionaries in the world, isn't it? But it's just OED that is doing what they are doing with Nigerian English and, of course, whatever itself. So what's happening to their dictionaries? It's just about those who are managing that dictionary. They've not come up to see that. So words actually live their lives, sometimes for centuries. And this is something that comes up a lot, right? When in our discussion, for example, when we're adding the word japa, all right, we could only find evidence of that word being in use dating back to like 2019. I'm not sure now. I'll find the date. But did that word start its life in 2019? The answer is no. But the OED is looking at examples. Can they find example where? So a word sometimes. Okay, the earliest example we found for Japa was 2018, but we do know that this word has been in existence before then. All right. So, but this is the earliest example they could find when the word began to enter written, because most of the evidence the OED used actually comes from written evidence. So, but also, one of the things that when it comes to Abeg, for example, especially the pidgin words, is that we have to place a difference here between Nigerian pidgin, which is also called Niger, and then Nigerian English. Abeg is Nigerian pidgin word. One of the other words that's been added is Biko, for example, which is an Igbo word. So these words have existed either in Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa or pidgin before now, but the OED is looking at how they have now transformed into being used in English, right? So the context in which they are used, it has become clearly English. If you look at Abi, for example, the first example comes from Ben Okri's novel, Flowers and Shadows. It says, if one doesn't talk, it doesn't mean one is foolish, Abi. Right? So you find that that sentence is English. Everything about that sentence is English. The only thing that looks pidgin there is Abi. So because of that, we can't say that Abi is pidgin. The Abi is English. But the word itself was borrowed from pidgin. So what happens most times is that for many of us who are Nigerians, these words have lived with us as Yoruba words. These words have lived with us as Bini words, as Hausa words, as Pidgin words, but their history in English may not be as far as their history in Pidgin or their history in the other Nigerian languages. I don't know if that makes sense.
I totally understand what you just said there, and I do agree with you. But then there is another issue to take a look at here, and it has to do with influence, tribal influence in Nigeria. Which tribes are responsible for most words? How do I put this again? Which tribes are responsible for the most words added to the dictionary? We've got many languages. So I'm asking which is the most influential tribe that has been responsible in adding words to the dictionary?
Well, I'll use language groups, right? I'm trying to intentionally avoid the word tribe.
Go ahead. Right? Yes, I understand.
So, we know the big three, as it is called in Nigeria, which is language majoritization, which is also language minority. Because when Nigeria, for example, recognizes 4 official languages, isn't it?
Yes.
English, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. That is marginalization, because what that means is that you're saying that the other over 500 languages are minority, are small, are not important. So I don't want to go into that.
Okay.
But we also know that it's about numbers, right? It's about numbers. So these 3 language groups, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, they have the numbers. That is the truth, and they have the influence. So I would think that you will see that most of when you talk about Jakpa, when you talk about Abi, when you talk about Biko, many of them come from these 3 languages. Suya is there, and which comes from Hausa. So you see that it numbers matter. If, for example, you are in a group, and in a group of 10, and 8 of them say we want to do this, it's likely that the group will do that. So that's why I say numbers matter. So these 3, but that does not mean in any way that the other languages are less important. Every language, as linguists, we acknowledge that every language is important to the people who speak them. If they are not important to you, that is your business, but it is important. Every language is important to people who speak them. But these 3 languages, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, are really, really influential. Think of the cultural capital, I would say, this is my personal opinion, of Nigeria is Lagos. Lagos is the cultural capital of Nigeria. Everybody wants to go to Lagos. Everybody wants to work in Lagos. Everybody wants to do something in Lagos, isn't it? And that comes with something. It is not just about the money that's in Lagos. So when this comes, it's about the language as well. So Yoruba is hugely influential in Nigeria. In fact, there's this German professor who writes a lot about English in Nigeria, and has argued that most of the words we say are Nigerian English, actually Lagos English, so to speak. And there's a thing like that in scholarship, right? And that tells you how culturally influential Lagos is. So Yoruba is there, Igbo is there, and Hausa is there, but as well as the other languages.
Okay. Yeah. So how much more culturally influential is Nigeria generally at adding these words to the dictionary when compared to other African countries?
Nigeria is huge. And again, I use that phrase, numbers matter. We are the most populous country in Africa, the most populous country, black country in the world. And it's not just about the number, but also about the influence. Nigeria is really influential. Think of Nollywood. Nollywood, I think in terms of production, is the 3rd largest movie industry in the world after Hollywood and Bollywood. All right, think about music industry. Talk about the influence of Nigerian hip-hop artists. We can mention names, right? But we do know, for example, the N-word, borrowing your term, we're talking about, we do know how much this word is used in Nigerian contemporary Nigerian music. And this travels all over the world. There's hardly any year, for a long time now, you see Nigerian artists. You see Thames, you see Wizkid, you see Davido, you see many of them, right?
Yes.
Making the list of the best of the best and the most respected music awards, Grammy, name them, in the world. That is something that shows you that Nigeria. For example, I think some years ago, Davido Davido held a show in London, I think in O2 Arena, and it was filled to the brim. Weeks before the ceremony, the tickets ran out. That is something. See Nigerian musicians traveling across the world, they close stadiums, they close music halls. And that is something. It's not Nigerians coming from Nigeria to attend those shows. It's actually people from all over the world. And that comes with some people listen to this. And music is, even though music
absolutely.
is primarily rhythmic, but it's also culture, it's words.
It's not just that, it's also capital. It is a big, it's big capital.
Yeah.
But what can we do with that? Whether socially, whether politically, noting that we have the attention of the world when it comes to designing how the world sees language or language from Africa. What can Nigeria do with it?
A lot, actually, a lot. The creative industries, for example, is a huge market. And this is something that the government should tap into. Nigeria can become the cultural capital of the world because we have the resources, we have the talent, we have everything it needs to be able to get to that. And we can see that already manifesting. And that is money, just to speak in that basic sense. That's money that we can tap into. We can make people come to that. And I know something is already happening. Actually, there is something that happens in Lagos now. It started recently called Dirty December, right? With all the things, I don't want to go into detail, all the things around it.
Yes.
That is something is emerging, all right? It depends on how we frame it. We can frame it. We can redefine what is emerging. But last year's Dirty December in Lagos was huge. I was watching clips on social media, people traveling from all over the world, coming to Lagos in December to have to relax, to enjoy themselves, to enjoy the music, to enjoy the food, to enjoy, and we can make something huge after this. But we must do this in a very positive light to be sure that we are selling what we are selling to the world is positive, and we do have this in quantum.
All right, Kingsley, let's slow down. Let's not sell to the world yet. Let's sell to West Africa. West Africa has a culture where Pidgin English, which is where most of these words actually are incubated, come from. Yeah. And our Pidgin English seems to be one that is spoken across West Africa. It's the one thing that even facilitates trade. When you go to Cotonou, you can still speak Pidgin English and still be understood. As far as Senegal, as far as Liberia, you can still be understood as a West African. This is advantage for us when it comes to trade. Is it advantage for us when it comes to technology? And I say this with AI in mind. Do you think we can develop AI to understand our own language and build it so it perhaps grows bigger than where we have it now, as in West Africa? Maybe even include other African regions. Your thoughts?
Yes, I did a paper some years ago on West African Pidgin varieties. Yes, I completely agree. And this is something, again, it's about the economic, political, cultural influence of Nigeria across West Africa. So, for example, in 2017, the BBC started what's called BBC Pidgin. That was when that service started. And where is the headquarters? Nigeria, Lagos. And that's what I'm talking about, Lagos. And when you look at this BBC service covers the entirety of West Africa, right? Or so it claims. But then when you read their content, or even their content, video, audio, text, you find that it is like 90% Nigeria. And that is what happens. So Nigeria holds the power. So if we realize that we hold this power, we can make good use of it. For integration, for example, I was attending a conference in South Africa, and I met Cameroonian, and I met also Senegalese, and we spoke Pidgin practically effortlessly. When I'm in Ghana, I speak Pidgin on the street, and that's fine. And that's for integration. Integration. You might argue, after all, English is there, right? But integration is important for the economic integration, but also travel integration and all of that. So it is absolutely important that we make good use of that opportunity. But then the government has a role to play here. Again, when you mention Pidgin, what kind of orientation, what kind of attitudes crop out when people hear Pidgin? Mostly it is negative. All right, but this shouldn't be. It's a language of its own. In fact,
so what must we do? What must we do to sanitize the image then? And remember, I mentioned AI. I'm wondering whether this could help sanitize that image. That was where I was going, to make it more commonly accepted across the world as a language on its own, not just as an offspring of English in Nigeria.
Yes, a lot is already being done. If you go to ChatGPT and ask it, can you speak Pidgin now? It tells you yes, even though it does so pretty much incorrectly most times. But it's about work, it's about what is put there. Of course, we know that these LLMs are trained with large data from what is available out there. So what I usually say is, how much of Pidgin texts do we have available that the AI can pull data from and be trained with? And a lot is already being done about it. I know a professor, a Nigerian professor in Canada, who just secured a huge project on making LLMs, big LLMs, understand Nigerian Pidgin more. And there's a lot going on actually. So this can be done, and you find that ChatGPT, even Gemini, they speak at least basic Pidgin, and that tells you that this is possible. We need. I keep saying that if you don't blow your own trumpet, if you don't keep your house in order, nobody will do it. We have a lot to do as Nigerians. First of all, we should take pride in what is ours. One of the things that is ours is Pidgin. We should take pride in it. It is ours. There's nothing negative about it. In some countries, right, Pidgin variety is also an official variety. Why can't we recognize Pidgin as one of the official languages in Nigeria? There are we have more people in Nigeria speaking Pidgin than English, but English is, right? So why can't we? There's nothing wrong about it. Okay?
I mean, Creole is not an original language, is it? But it is recognized in countries where it's spoken. Am I correct?
Yes. There are countries in which Bislama, for example, is recognized as official, which is a Creole. But Pidgin also has Creolized in some parts of Nigeria. And in Niger Delta areas, there are people who speak Pidgin as their first and only language.
True.
One example, a recent example I've given elsewhere to tell, because many Nigerians will say, oh, Pidgin is just English. It's just for you to break English. And that's why some people call it broken English. No, it's not. It's a different language. A recent example, I watched a clip of Pastor Paul Enenche preaching somewhere in Niger Delta recently. I think that was around December time. He was preaching in English, and his preaching was being interpreted in Pidgin. And this is common. It's really common in the Niger. And it tells us that Pidgin is a full-blown language, and we can make something. Now, we have a few services, right? I was Googling the other time, Nigerian newspapers that publish in Pidgin. And BBC is the huge one. BBC is not a Nigerian company, it's British,
exactly.
Right? And they are doing something bigger than what we are. I mean, they have the prestige, they have the resources, right? But we should do this. How many TV stations, how many radio stations are purely? I know there is Wazobia, for example, right? Which is Pidgin. That is huge. But even mainstream media, both traditional and non-traditional, should have full services, right, in Pidgin, and that is how to take pride in what is ours. We hear ministers. The other day, somebody from the royal family, British royal family, came to Nigeria and spoke English. I think that was Prince Charles then, and President Macron came to Nigeria and spoke Pidgin, and we clapped. How many of our Nigerian politicians are expected to speak Pidgin in public? Maybe a few. We should normalize these things. It is our thing, and we should take pride in it. And I do, as a person, anywhere I go. I just they yarn my Pidgin. They go as much as I can.
Abi, Naso, Abeg. In fact, let's do one in a new central Pidgin English outreach. That would be great. Abi, what do you think? In any case, before we go, one of the producers wanted to know, since you are a consultant for the OED, what the difference between Abi and Shebi is.
Right, that's interesting. Right, Abi simply means most of these things are used as intensifiers, right? That is to ask questions. Most times, Abeg is usually used in the sense of, we call it sentence adverb. Sometimes means it's clearly, it's clearly so, right? If someone says, or it's used in the terms of, okay, I know this is true, or don't you think so, right? Shebi sometimes is also used in that same sense. And is also used to ask questions. Shebi, we should go. Should we go? All right.
Okay.
Most times, these things, both of them are used in the sense of interrogatively, that's asking questions, but not necessarily asking questions that you need an answer to, but asking questions that you need to confirm that the person agrees with you, so to speak.
Okay, so Mava, just to simplify it some more, I guess Abi is a confirmation while Shebi is an inquiry. Am I correct?
Well, in a sense, yes, but also in other senses they are used interchangeably, because are we going to end this program very soon? I say Abi, you can say yes.
Abi, right? we can end now.
Abi, we can end now. Then intonation is very important of the speaker, because when we have rising tone, then it becomes a question. Even I am fine can become a question. Somebody say, I am fine, right? That becomes a question, even though that's traditionally a sentence.
Kingsley, this has become a very interesting conversation. They're rushing me off the air now, but I don't want it to stop. But thank you very much for being a part of this session here. I have absolutely enjoyed it. I hope the new words get added next year. Do you have any idea what word might be added?
Absolutely, yes. I was going to say that OED has now serialized it, that every December, West African English is from West Africa will be added, including Nigeria. Every December.
Fantastic. Kingsley, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to more words inside of the Oxford English Dictionary for 2026. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.